On a frozen Russian mountain in 1959, 9 hikers did the unthinkable. They slashed their own tent open from the inside, and they ran. They didn't just step out. They fled. Into a sub-zero darkness so profound it swallows sound itself. They ran barefoot across the permafrost, choosing the certain death of the Siberian winter over whatever was inside that nylon sanctuary. They never returned. What terrified them enough to choose freezing over staying inside? Decades later, the Dyatlov Pass incident remains the world's most disturbing unsolved mystery. To understand the end, we have to understand the beginning. It started as a celebration, a group of elite hikers seeking the highest level of certification. They weren't looking for tragedy, they were seeking adventure. Igor Dyatlov and his team were not amateurs. These were master survivalists, students of the Ural Polytechnic Institute who lived for the bite of the wind and the challenge of the climb. Their journals, found weeks later, described a journey filled with laughter, songs by the fire, and high spirits. They were young, strong, and invincible. But as they climbed higher, the Ural Mountains turned against them. The wind began to howl in a key they didn't recognize. On February 1st, the weather shifted from difficult to deadly. Off course and exhausted by a sudden blizzard, the group made a choice that historians still debate today. Instead of retreating to the tree line for cover, they set up camp on the exposed, barren slope of Kholat Syakhl. In the local Monsey language, that name carries a heavy omen, the Dead Mountain. That night, the temperature plummeted to -22 degrees. Inside the tent, the group likely ate a cold meal, joked about the cold, and settled into their sleeping bags. And then, something happened that defied all logic and human instinct. Something so sudden that they didn't even have time to unlace the tent's door. Weeks passed. At the base camp, the silence grew heavy. It was a deafening, suffocating silence that eventually forced a search party into the wilderness. When rescue helicopters finally spotted the campsite from the air, the pilot's heart must have skipped a beat. The tent was a lonely, tattered speck against the vast white sheet of the mountain. What they found on the ground froze the blood of the search party. The tent was collapsed, half buried in snow, but the supplies, the boots, the coats, the food, were all untouched. The hikers had sliced their way out. 9 sets of tracks led down the slope in the moonlight. Some were barefoot. Some wore a single sock. They were walking, not running, toward their graves. A mile away, at the edge of the forest under an ancient cedar, the horror became physical. They found the first 2 bodies, frozen in their underwear. Their hands were charred and burned. They had tried desperately to climb the cedar tree, snapping branches 5 meters up until their fingers were raw. Were they climbing to escape a predator? Or were they trying to see if the tent, their only hope, was still there? Voice drops to a whisper. This is where the official report turns into a horror story. The remaining hikers were found months later, only after the spring thaw began to peel back the layers of the mountain. They were buried deep in a ravine, under 4 meters of snow. The autopsies were baffling. 3 of them had injuries consistent with a high-speed car crash. Crushed skulls. Shattered ribs. 1 hiker's heart had been hemorrhaged. But here is the detail that keeps investigators awake at night: there were no external bruises. No skin was broken. It was as if they were squeezed from the inside by a giant, invisible hand. And then, the most chilling detail of all, Ludmila Dubinina was missing her tongue, her eyes, and part of her lips. The official report noted her clothes, and the clothes of others, tested positive for high levels of radioactive contamination. The investigators were paralyzed. There were no animal tracks. No signs of a struggle with local tribes. No other humans for 100 miles. Just 9 experts, broken and irradiated in the snow. Midpoint reset. So, what killed them? The theories are as strange as the bodies themselves. Theory 1, the avalanche. For years, this was the safe explanation. A slab of snow slid down, crushed the tent, and injured the hikers. It explains the panic and the lack of shoes. But it doesn't explain why they walked a mile away instead of digging for their gear. And it certainly doesn't explain the radiation. Theory 2, infrasound. The wind of terror. Scientists suggest the unique shape of the mountain could have turned the wind into a Kármán vortex street. This creates infrasound, a frequency below human hearing that triggers intense physical illness and psychological dread. It creates a frequency of fear that causes humans to go mad, imagining monsters in the dark until they run into the cold to escape their own minds. Theory 3. The military connection. This is the dark horse. Hikers in a nearby valley reported seeing glowing orange spheres in the sky that night. Was it a parachute mine test? A secret Soviet vacuum bomb? A concussion weapon gone wrong? This would explain the internal crush injuries, the orange tint of the victim's skin reported by funeral goers, and the radiation. The Soviet government immediately sealed the case files. They didn't offer answers. They offered a phrase that has become legendary in the annals of the unexplained. The cause of death was listed simply as an unknown compelling force. Today, modern science points to a rare type of delayed slab avalanche, aided by the hikers cutting into the slope to level their tent. But for many, the math simply doesn't add up. Why the missing tongue? Why the paradoxical stripping, where victims take off their clothes even as they freeze to death? Why the silence of the state? The mountain has kept its secret for over 60 years. The Dyatlov group remains frozen in time, forever young, forever smiling in those final grainy black and white photos found in their cameras. They serve as a chilling reminder that we are guests in the wild, not masters. There are corners of this map where the laws of physics and the comforts of logic seem to thin out. Some places on Earth are simply not meant for us. Listen to the wind next time you're alone in the dark. And remember the lesson of Kolat Sayakal. Don't go where you don't belong.